Not the same.
It's great to be here. I tried. I wasn't able to attend the whole conference. I had duties yesterday morning and stuff like that. But
Okay.
at least a bit to be here.
Morning, morning all. And people online. So I'm Anthony Smith from the University of Salford. I'm chairing this panel, Changing Technologies. Trying to speak to camera here. And we have 3 speakers this morning, and our first speaker ready to go is Raquel Ruiz Incertis from the Universidad Carlos III Madrid, with her paper Platforms and Advertising, a Return to Conventional TV. So take it away, Raquel.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you find this presentation interesting. Actually, it's like my first international conference because I'm a master's student. So hope you're finding it writing now. And everything goes well. Can you see it properly?
Yeah.
Okay. Give it a minute. Okay, great. So basically, I'm gonna start with an introduction to my after study because in November the streaming Netflix finally launched its new financing proposal in Spain, known as Basic Plan for a monthly fee of 5.49 euros. And this new plan, which combines subscription with advertising, was added to
Raquel, you just broken up though.
Yeah. She's mute.
Raquel, you've just gone on mute.
I'm not sure she can hear us.
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh,
Oh yeah, she is on mute, isn't she? Raquel, it looks like you've gone mute. There you go.
I don't know what's happening, but I'm trying. Okay. I don't know where you lost me.
I think just after you mentioned how much it costs.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this new plan basically combines subscription with advertising. Yes, I think the room might need to move themselves. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's gonna be better. Great. Thanks. Spain, as I said, was the last of the 12 countries to have their new plan with advertisements for a cheaper price. It began in Canada, Mexico, followed by Australia, Brazil, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom and the United States, of course. In the selection of countries, according to the company representatives, were taking into consideration both the volume of total plays on the platform and the maturity of their respective advertising markets. It should also be borne that it should also be borne in mind that Netflix has struggled for years to achieve vertical integration in Spanish audiovisual market through production commissions, acquisitions of third-party works, and efforts to gain and retain subscribers. Proof of this is that with the opening of a center in Tres Cantos in Madrid in 2019, Madrid became the European headquarters for the development of attractive content within its Netflix Originals label. But following the presentation of Netflix results at the beginning of the past year, the substantial change of the company's business model is evidence enough of the need to halt the decline of subscribers that it has been experiencing in recent times. This decline has not been without controversy because there is a battle against share accounts as you may know, under threat of a takeover by its competitor Disney Plus. This is not a warm welcome, we can say, and the advertising sector it's also appealing to the streaming services. Therefore, what I try to do with my work is to reflect on Netflix timing transition from the SVOD model to the AVOD model with the inclusion of the new basics plans with ads. Given the limited length of the work, the thing is to address in a generic way the causes that have led to this and to analyze like the main characteristics of this new subscription option and to present the platform's growth forecast for the next 5 years. The questions that arise is, will the platform's subscribers opt for this partial return to traditional television model with advertising? Will they be able to pay lower for opt for this system? And how does such a traditional model proposition work on the OTT services? Generally, I don't know if I can see it. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, despite its recent loss of subscribers, Netflix continues to establish itself as the world's leading streaming service. In fact, the co-founder Reed Hastings reported in a new earnings report, thanks to recent releases that boosted viewing rates, the company had rebounded on the third quarter for its recent subscriber bumps. But Netflix surprised the markets by gaining almost 2.5 million users, more than twice as many as expected last year, which seemed to compensate for the loss of 1.2 million customers in the first half of the 2022. Looking ahead to the end of the year, a positive trend is expected. Actually, Netflix expects to add another 4.5 million subscribers from October to December of this year. This statistical data also shows that as of December 2022, the number of subscribers in Europe, Africa, Middle East market exceeded 73 million, slightly above the North American market. And on a national level, focusing in Spain, actually, Barlovento Comunicación, TV's OTT barometer, that it's like television organization in Spain, indicates that each Spaniard had access to an average of 2.7 paid TV platforms, of which Netflix tops the ranking for yet another year with the more than the 55% reach and 32.4% share of consumption. Although Netflix first place confirms its hegemony, it is worth highlighting other OTT services whose reach is estimated to be significant among the Spanish population, such as Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, or HBO Max, with almost 50%, 22.4%, or 21.7% respectively. This trend is confirmed by another barometer, the GCAS OTT, which indicates that Netflix continues to lead OTT services by percentage of registered platform users. However, the figures achieved by Disney Plus show that it has recently been nipping at its heels. Although Netflix has experienced a growth of 0.8 compared to the previous wave of the study, equaling its historical record in the spring of 2020 during the pandemic, Disney Plus has a 36.1 and is the fastest growing streaming platform for the second consecutive quarter and reaches all-time record by positioning itself in the third place behind Prime Video in Spain. So globally, the growth of subscription video on demand services as forecast, it follows according to recent surveys. Netflix will experience a gradual increase in the number of subscribers until 2025, which will then decrease by between 2026 and 2027. And Prime Video's growth will be progressive, which figures equivalent to those of Netflix in 2027. But Disney Plus subscriber numbers rebound in 2026, outpacing those of its two direct competitors before falling back to third places in 2027. So we can say actually that the streaming sector continues to grow. It will grow by 7.6% by 2026, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers Spain report. And it's evolving towards a subscription-based business model, but its margin for growth is still being improved because profits are shaken by relying solely in such revenues. For the first time, companies face the possibility that there may not be enough subscriptions to meet their business expectations. So Netflix is therefore likely to remain at the top for the next 5 years, although the various subscription plans need to be combined with advertising and alternative sources of funding if it is to continue to maximize their profitability of its production and distribution services and maintain this empire. So basically the features of the new basic plan with ads in Spain, in general terms, the recent inclusion of Netflix plans respond to the need to have a double revenue stream from advertisers who introduce their advertising spots before and during the viewing of audiovisual content, and from subscribers who pay their fee month by month or by contracting as an annual package that integrates other telephone or entertainment services. While the fee have not stopped growing in recent years, young platforms such as Disney Plus or HBO Max have based their attraction strategy on a very competitive pricing policy and discount offers, which places the company, Netflix company, at a clear disadvantage. The launch of the new basic plan with ads implies, in addition to a saving for the subscriber of almost 2.5 years compared to the conventional basic plan, a change from the SVOD, subscription video on demand model, to advertising-based video on demand for the platform in Spain. However, this is in turn incorporates certain particularities. On the one hand, it doesn't allow access to between 5 and 10% of the content in this catalog, which varies depending on the country, for which Netflix still has not the full license, so they have restricted able license. Such content is displayed with a padlock icon when searching for it on browsing Netflix, as the warning that it cannot be played when opting for the cheapest rate. Among the main criticisms for the subscribers and digital products experts are the impossibility to download series or movies for offline viewing. Also, the incompatibility of the plan with some, apparently many older devices, or the limitation of viewing quality to 720p HD. Issues that the high definition is not permitted, so that directly affect the user experience. On the other hand, there is an issue of advertising which needs to be analyzed further. For Netflix, the new plan represents a unique opportunity to advertisers, as they will have access to deep buyers and highly loyal audience, especially young people, the platform's main asset and one of the targets that is less inclined to traditional television consumption. The streaming service reports that it will give advertisers the possibility of excluding their advertising from content that could be incompatible with the brand. As for the pricing model, at least in the first phase, a fixed price system will be followed, while the CPM, the cost for thoughts and impressions offered to advertisers has not been made public. But while Netflix has been made available to advertising option for targeting by country, genre, and even content popularity, in practice, this targeting according to user profile and preferences does not seem to have been taken hold after observing how the new plan worked during the months of November, December, and January 2023, that there were the first 3 months after the releasing of this new plan in Spain. When setting up the account, some questions are asked in order to test our profile, but the ads do not manage to respond exactly to the subscribers' interest and are frequently repeated regardless of the content consumed, which suggests that the personalization of advertising spots is still in a beta version. However, it has been noted that most of the ads, which in terms of format, content, and message could be broadcast perfectly well on linear television, they seek to establish some kind of connection between their product and the Netflix brand through references or links to the series' fashion, such, for example, Money Heist, and the concept of a spoiler in a TV series, among others. The constant commitment to the total personalization of the viewing experience responds once again to what co-founder Mark Randall considers to be Netflix's great contribution to corporate culture. More specifically, commercial breaks on Netflix are inserted before, during, and after playback of the content for each piece of content lasting between 45 minutes and 1 hour. There are 4 to 5 minutes of commercials are stipulated, and they are marked in yellow on the timeline, just like on YouTube. At the beginning of the viewing, there's a spot of approximately 20 seconds, and then there are up to 4 equivalent slots with 60 to 80 seconds of advertising are shown in each lot. And finally, another spot to close the episode and make way for the next one. In the case of feature films, those references times are double, and it's also worth noting that if Netflix is played in the browser, the ad will pause when switching tabs, demanding the viewer's attention all times to give way to the audiovisual content. Okay. So, yes, I think I'm gonna change to this part. There's a partial return to the traditional TV model. Okay, so over the last few years, we are witnessing a bubble effect on non-linear television platforms. The most important changes that have occurred in the television industry over the past decade are internet television and the end of channelized viewer experience. The era of control of television operators had declined in favor of an era of freedom of viewer choices, as viewers can access any video content available online whenever and wherever they want. As a result, viewer consumption habits have been transformed by freeing its content from the yoke imposed by television grid. Netflix has favored practices such as binge watching by offer complete season of its star series in one go. But this audiovisual saturation of television overabundance symbolizes a paradigm shift characterized by an increase in platforms and devices and even greater fragmentation of the viewers. However, it is time to ask whether there's OTT-driven production and business models and OTT technologies will be viable in the long term, or whether they will moderate, slow down once natural selection has done its work and companies finally take position in the market. Some authors point out that there are already signs of saturation that are likely to lead to market concentrations. The reality is that Netflix is the only platform that in Spain has historically maintained an anti-advertising discourse. And that's interesting because others such as HBO or Disney Plus have seen advertising as a possible financial ally from the beginning, and Prime Video, for its part, opts for self-promotion and subscription offers, as it recalls with its amusing response to some Netflix winks in the Spanish television. In any case, the AVOD television model does not work with the same advertising philosophy, despite being based on the same product, advertisements. Conventional linear television offers the effectiveness of advertising is based on segmentation of the public, since it seeks the affinity of the brand with the content that is being played. As we mentioned before, personalization, it is ideally a relevant factor. In an advertising-based video-on-demand system, it is possible to show different advertisements within the same content, depending on the person watching, something that it doesn't happen in the case of traditional television. So Netflix ad-supported basic plan is not an attempt to transform the subscription model into something closer to television, but an adapted response to changing market conditions as competition in the audiovisual sector increases, and to other threats such as the economic downturn and the proliferation of other streaming services. So in conclusion, thanks to its new financial ally, the advertising market, Netflix's future looks promising, actually. Greater investments in the platform by advertisers and an exponential increase in the number of subscribers in the coming years. Regarding this issue, in 2020, the CNMC, that is like National Commission of Markets and Competency, stopped publishing official data on OTT service customers, given the complexity of obtaining reliable figures due to the intricate tax regime and the dubious transparency of companies such as Netflix or Disney Plus, which until now bill their Spanish customers from parent companies located abroad. But it is to be hoped that with the entry into force of new general law on audiovisual communication in Spain, this problem will be definitely solved, and detailed reports on the number of subscribers and annual profits of Netflix in our country will be obtained. Some authors point out that the shift to AVOD is just the tip of iceberg of the myriad changes that are transforming the economic model that the company has sustained for 3 decades. After some time speculating about the next step from ad-free streaming platforms, it seemed that the arrival of advertising was inevitable, and Netflix will not be the only one to implement this strategy. In some countries, and Spain among them, both Disney Plus and HBO Max are already planning this, launching similar plans in a few months' time. It may be that the IP address limitation that Netflix tends to impose on shared premium accounts beyond the family home will significantly benefit this cheaper subscription alternative, although it is still too early to venture hypotheses. So finally, free-to-air and pay TV revenues have almost become equal, and in recent years, pay TV is in fact the sector that is managing to consolidate its growth year after year. The OTTs are increasingly opting for a mixed model in which advertising serves as a complement through the sport format or product placement. Actually, despite the increase in advertising investments in these services, the absolute figures still represent a marginal value in their total revenues, which are mainly based on subscription models. But it is not in the area of revenue, but rather in the area of content, where streaming platforms really pose a threat to conventional television, as we've been seeing for the past 10 years. In this sense, the same authors points out that companies such as Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, and HBO have established themselves as a real alternative in the creation of their own original content with a flexible and adaptable consumer ecosystem, which is the main differential value with respect to traditional television formulas. Therefore, even if it begins to adopt strategies similar to those of free-to-air linear television, such as the inclusion of advertisements in their new basic plans in order to make its business model profitable, Netflix will continue to attract young audiences eager for innovative audiovisual content proposals and with different consumption habits to previous generation. So that will be all. Many thanks. I'm open to any questions.
Okay, thank you for that fascinating paper, Raquel. We will take questions after all three papers.
Okay.
Okay, I should have said this before, but what I'll do is as we approach, say, 18 minutes, I will say, it won't be heard, but I will, if you happen to be looking at the camera, I'll do this to say 2 minutes, and you can put that in the chat. So, so watch out for that. Okay, so next up, we have Bogumila Mateja-Jaworska from the Mickiewicz University in Poznań, Poland. I know I'm saying those words horribly, Bogumila, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I forgive.
And Bogumila's paper is Nostalgia Algorithms, the struggle for power between the media industry and viewers. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I really enjoy being here with you, even if I'm online. I'm a sociologist and I study post-TV culture in Poland. I conducted a research project on television in transition and the transformation of viewing habits as part of my PhD a few years ago. However, this presentation is part of building a working framework for a new project in which I'd like to explore media practices related to streaming video services and recommendation systems. So I will be very grateful for your feedback. What can I improve? What can I add here? So without further ado, let's move to today's topic. And as researchers have repeatedly emphasized, television is a dynamically changing medium that has the capacity to reinvent itself. Trying to describe these transformations, scholars have often distinguished at least 3 phases, and we have a lot of this kind of distinguishes. Like in Urikio's models, we move from broadcasting to silvercasting. In Alice, we could distinguish times of scarcity, availability, and of plenty. And for me, what's really important here is that there are different dimensions to this transformation of television, and they are all interrelated. So, for example, we've seen changes over the time in the number of different TV channels and in the way they are accessed. The rise of streaming services seems to be particularly striking here. We could see how business models have changed, and Raquel addressed that issue before. We can also see how the technology has changed from the first TV sets to those with remote controls, to the VCRs, to the smart TVs. And I know that Alexa will cover that issue and will talk in more details about it later in our panel. What I want to focus in this presentation is the audience and how the change in viewing modes, including the loosening of the rigid schedules characteristic for linear TV and growing importance of recommender systems, has repositioned the audience. So in other simpler words, is the audience position stronger or weaker than before? And if we were to rely on media industry representatives, what they say, we could conclude that we are living in the best of times. Television audiences have more power than ever before, as you can see, for example, from the quote from Reed Hastings here. There used to be also a lot of excitement about interactivity and greater audience agency from many new media theorists, not to mention techno enthusiasts. This can also be seen at the level of language, where the early vision of passive viewer, the figure of couch potato, transforms and is replaced by the notion of active users. However, media scholars who analyze the role of recommendation algorithms are much more skeptical and critical. They, like David Beer, argue that the technology is used by the media industry to exert greater control. It is the algorithms that guide our attention and keep us active on the streaming platform. Other media scholars have tried to explain the operation of algorithms using Althusser's category of interpolation, or like Nick Seaver, the anthropological concept of the trap. There's also a bait, and you should know your victim really really good, really well to know if the bait is going to be effective. At the heart of this is the persuasive, non-coercive ability to change user behavior. To sum up my reflection so far, my point is that the technologies used in streaming services can, of course, be used to increase the audience agency. In reality, however, it is the media industry that determines the final form and ultimately defines the ecosystem in which users operate. Therefore, the balance of power remains more or less the same. So can we not say that this is a new form of TV framing when Netflix boasts that over 80% of viewer activity is driven by personalized recommendations? For although we are not dealing with the temporal structuring of media experiences, the role of the bait, of enticement, of staying tuned is even stronger and more effective than in the case of linear TV. Reflecting on the power struggle between audience technology and the media industry in the context of TV framing leads us to the more general question of the social perception of algorithm. What's fascinating for me is it's full of paradoxes, of contradictions. There isn't time to discuss them all here, so I've chosen the last two for this presentation. The problem of control over one's media experience I just described before brings us back to paradox brilliantly described by John Kahn in his book, The Burden of Choice. He points out that it is in the interest of late capitalism to see choice as a burden. The invention of recommender systems thus appears as a magical solution to the problem of a culture of excess. Algorithms promise individualism, personalization, tailoring to individuals. In fact, they lump individuals into certain categories that are convenient from the system's point of view, like communities of tastes. The second paradox I want to address today is the issue of what I call the future or past-oriented perception of algorithms. Again, if we look at industry reports, recommendation systems are likely to be described as advanced technologies using cutting-edge solutions, innovations in machine learning, deep learning, and so on. On the other hand, however, we will find that even most advanced models rely heavily on historical data. Could this lead to a culture of nostalgia? A number of scholars have pointed out that nostalgia has become a phenomenon on an unprecedented scale. Among them is Svetlana Boym, who defines nostalgia as a sense of loss, but also a certain romance with one's own fantasy. She described nostalgia as a disease of modernity, a reaction to secularization, industrialization, the modern concept of time and technological progress. Similarly, when Bauman writes about retrotopia, he explains it as a reaction to the rapidly changing world, to the risk and anxieties associated with it. Simon Reynolds, in his Retromania, on the other hand, points up to pop culture and nostalgia as easily accessible source of identity, especially generational identity. The link between mass media and nostalgia was quickly picked up by media scholars. When considering how nostalgia works in television, Stefanie Armbruster distinguished between two types of nostalgia. The first is content that is intentionally produced as nostalgic, such as, for example, Stranger Things, but also all kinds of revivals, reboots, Little Mermaids, and so on and so forth. The second concerns reception practices rather than content. The feeling of nostalgia when watching certain programs from the past that were not created to be nostalgic. For example, watching Friends in 2023. As Pallister points out, Netflix fits perfectly into both perspectives. It becomes both a producer of nostalgia and an access point for nostalgic responses to previously circulated content because of its huge library. So why is the media so eager to tap into nostalgia? Among the possible answers to this question is it is probably easy to point to economic factors, economic reasons. So it's easy to attract audiences, relatively safe investments, easy money, we can say. However, we should not forget that the factor of building cultural power is also important. Through this self-reference and repetition, television creates a specific canon and updates the competence of the viewers and the next generations of viewers who are watching the same of reboots of the same content. So going to conclusions. In my talk, I wanted to show that we are dealing with ongoing power struggles between the media industry and the audience. This can be seen especially at the level of contradictions, cracks between social discourses and people's behavior. To sum up my consideration, I'd like to emphasize that streaming services function to a large extent like new, innovative bottles for old wine, for old mechanism we know really well. Not only do the new technological possibilities fail to prevent the increased control of the media industry and to mark the end of the nostalgia culture, but they even strengthen these mechanisms and lead to a threat to privacy, as Raquel pointed out with this hyper-personalization of the advertisements. And in fact, we can talk about nostalgia culture on steroids. Thank you very much. I would be very grateful for your feedback.
Thank you very much, Bogumila. That's fascinating. Now we will move to the third and final presentation. So we have Alexa Scarlata, who is presenting on behalf of herself and Ramon Lobato from RMIT University, Australia. And I don't know, I'm talking blankly to something people. But and the title of this paper is Prominence and Preferencing the Power of Smart TV Operating Systems. So please take it away, Alexa.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. And can you see my slides? Awesome. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. And it's so nice to be on this panel and to meet Raquel and Bogumila. in person for the first time. So as Anthony said, I am a research fellow working at RMIT, and I work very closely with my colleague, Associate Professor Ramon Lobato, who's on holidays with his family. He's escaped the Melbourne winter. So I'll be presenting on behalf of both of us today. Over the last 3 years or so, Ramon and I have been working together on an Australian Research Council project about the cultural impacts of smart TVs in Australia. And the aim of this project has been to understand the smart TV platforms, that is, operating systems built into these devices and their effects on public access and how they structure users' viewing choices. Drawing from this project, our paper today will focus on the smart TV home screen as a key site of power in contemporary TV culture. In what follows, we'll do two things. We'll explain the specific business practices that shape the discoverability of content in smart TV interfaces, and we'll explore what these business practices tell us about power dynamics in contemporary TV industries, with specific reference to smart TV software. Along the way, I'm going to share some findings from our current device testing and survey research that we've been conducting with colleagues here at RMIT to understand the implications of smart TV interface design for different kinds of audiences in Australia. But first, let's start with some definitions. Sorry if this is very basic for this audience, but I'd like to kind of take it back to the kind of foundational level. By smart TV, we mean an internet-connected app-enabled TV set. Almost all TVs that you buy in a store today are smart, and our research found that 2/3 of Australian adults now use a smart TV or streaming device at home, and I believe take-up rates are quite similar in the UK. Whereas quote-unquote dumb TVs would turn on and generally provide everyone access to the same suite of broadcast channels and outputs, smart TVs have different layers of software that collate, present, and engage with various apps, such as YouTube and Netflix in various ways. The vast majority of TVs sold in Australia and the UK use one of these operating systems. Samsung uses Tizen, Sony and TCL TVs use Google TV implementations, LG uses WebOS, Hisense Vidar, Amazon and Roku use their own operating systems. And as this slide shows, in some cases, the TV manufacturer and the platform operator are one and the same. For example, Samsung and LG have their own kind of specific operating systems. In other cases, the manufacturer and the platform operator are different. For example, numerous brands implement Google TV operating systems in slightly different ways. So how do these smart TV operating systems shape the discoverability of content? The smart TV operating system, such as Google TV or Tizen, controls all the key elements of the TV, including the App Store, search function, recommendation engine, and payments gateway. And then on top of this, you have various kinds of configuration options that are controlled by the TV manufacturer, such as Sony or Samsung. The manufacturer controls the positioning and pre-installation of apps and seeks to monetize the real estate of the interface in various ways, including through display advertising on the home screen. These are the prominence and preferencing capabilities of the smart TV that I allude to in the title of our paper. And as you can see from this short description, the smart TV is a complex software environment in which key decisions about the visibility and discoverability of content are subject to control by a range of intermediaries, including the TV manufacturer, the operating system provider, app developers, and advertisers and interface designers. Different users navigate this environment in different ways, depending on their interests, preferences, and kind of capabilities and digital literacy. All of this presents a challenge for TV industry studies, which must now confront difficult questions about the dispersal of power across a range of new and old gatekeepers. So how can we theorize the specific forms of power that regulate content discovery in the smart TV interface, and how might these be different from older forms of television? In our project, we draw on a number of scholarly traditions to try and make sense of the smart TV as a space of power. Work by scholars interested in the material and design history of the TV, including work by Chambers and Horrocks, draws attention to the ever-changing norms of TV hardware and software design, and has helped us to locate the smart TV historically within a longer tradition of devices, technology, and design practices. Work by STS scholars and others interested in the complex relations between devices and users, such as Silverstone, has helped us come to grips with the power of the device itself and the way it structures behaviour. Meanwhile, ethnographic studies of TV and VCR users by Morley, Gray, Lull and others have helped us to understand how this manifests in everyday device usage when the structuring power of TV technology kind of meets the agency of individual users. Putting this all together, our project has tried to understand smart TV usage as a multidimensional encounter between different kinds of agency. The interpretive agency of audiences, the capabilities of users, and finally, but very importantly, the agency of the device itself, which is designed to structure behaviour in particular ways. So we employed two key methods in our research. This makes my room behind me look much fancier than it is currently. But first we did some kind of significant TV testing. We've set up a TV lab here at RMIT. This is my office, and the 15-year-old me loves that this is where I come every day. Just a room full of TVs. We set up a room full of a kind of sample of 2022 entry-level smart TVs from leading manufacturers. This represents all of the major smart TV operating systems available in Australia. And we conducted user interface analysis to assess elements such as how easy it is to access free-to-air, app pre-installation, availability and prominence, and search and recommendation integration. And then late last year, we ran a nationally representative online panel survey of Australian smart TV users, which consisted of about 30 questions about content discovery, remote control use, app downloads, device customization, advertising, and privacy concerns. We wanted to try and triangulate what do users know how to do on their smart TVs, what do they actually do, and what do they profess to care about. And we thought it was really important to combine these methods because it's not enough to know what connected TV devices are offering or are capable of. We need to think about how this is mediated and understood in domestic everyday spaces by a variety of users as well. So that's a conceptual framework of the project. Let us now take you through what we've found. So the smart TV has and is very much utilising significant gatekeeping powers. Our device testing uncovered evidence of widespread self and partner preferencing, examples of search and recommendation bias, significant hidden or unlabeled advertising, and considerable gathering of user data. So I'm going to talk through some of these and show you some examples. So first of all, self and partner preferencing. We tested a range of smart TVs on their default settings and documented the apps that kind of come pre-installed on the device and in what order. And we found that major US video on demand apps like Netflix, Prime Video and YouTube, and where available, a manufacturer's free ad-supported TV or FAST offering like Samsung's Samsung TV Plus come pre-installed on all smart TVs. And they also occupy the prime real estate in app rows on the home screen, as you can see on the top right here. And see how prominent something like Netflix is placed. And in some instances, we found that these big US apps couldn't be moved or deleted from their prominent position. These services also feature heavily, as you can see on the bottom here, on the smart TV remotes, where branded shortcut buttons are sold on a commercial basis. The end result of this situation is high visibility for major US services that can afford to pay for it, and really patchy visibility for local broadcaster video on demand apps. For example, the two leading smart TV brands in Australia, Samsung and LG, they represent 52% of the market in Australia. They don't pre-install any of the commercial, any of the broadcaster video on demand apps. And there was only one remote shortcut for Australia's ABC on the Hisense remote, which has 12 shortcut buttons. As Ofcom found, another commercial benefit that comes with pre-installation includes kind of deep linking of search results and inclusion in recommendation rows. As such, our testing revealed that uneven pre-installation of apps also resulted in instances of search and recommendation bias as well. Select integration and all other apps, including broadcaster video on demand apps, receive limited integration. Advertiser content and partner and manufacturer-owned services were prioritized in the smart TV interface. So you can see here, as an example, we made sure that the local public broadcaster online service ABC iView kind of the version of BBC iPlayer, I guess, was downloaded on all the TVs. And then we conducted a title search for one of Australia's favourite exports, Bluey, which is an ABC kids show and is on ABC iView for free. Each of the smart TV operating systems direct the user to different services in the search results. The Vidar operating system on Hisense takes the user to Prime Video because it's partnered with them, and takes the user to a movie with a character named Bluey, then to episodes to buy on Apple TV Plus, and then finally ABC iView. The Tizen operating system on Samsung, every search result offers you YouTube search results. It doesn't take you to where it needs to go. Here are the best and worst case scenarios that we found. The Google TV implementations on Sony and TCL on the left direct the user straight to the free option. They take Australian users straight to where Bluey is available for free on on ABC iView. LG's WebOS platform, though, offers only paid episodes on Apple TV and then YouTube clips. This presents an obvious discoverability challenge for Australian broadcasters, as well as a usability problem for audiences. Our testing also found that smart TVs include many different types of advertising, including display ads, as you can see here, self-preferencing, partner preferencing, priority positioning, etc. There are no ad labeling requirements, and so ads are rarely labeled as such. And finally, the scope of personal data being collected by smart TVs, both during setup and during the setup process and while it's being used, is extensive. In some circumstances, smart TVs can also track what customers are watching within third-party apps via automated content recognition technology, which is often a kind of box that is pre-ticked during setup that a lot of people don't kind of read the terms and conditions, so they are agreeing to let the manufacturer watch every single thing they're watching, regardless of whether it's broadcast TV, Netflix, or watching a DVD or playing a game. As you can see in these images at the bottom, smart TV platforms utilize a range of dark patterns that encourage the user to give up more data than they need to. They ask the user to link their phone to their TV during setup, sharing data there. They misleadingly present the creation of a manufacturer account as offering an enhanced experience when it makes absolutely no difference to the user's experience of the smart TV. And like I said, they often pre-tick terms and condition boxes during setup that make the user have to kind of opt out later. That is if they can even find the privacy settings later. So I turn to our smart TV user survey results now, because we wanted to know, are consumers aware of these issues? Are they concerned about them? Are they concerned about the gatekeeping powers and anti-competitive practices that we uncovered? We found that smart TV users possess very different discovery habits and capacities. In particular, 1/3 of Australians are what we call customizers. They know how to download apps, they know how to customize the order of their apps, they know how to adjust their privacy settings. They're highly active and tech savvy, and this kind of group skewed younger and male. Unfortunately, on the other hand, there's about 1/4 of Australians that don't know how to do any of these things. They don't know how to download apps, customize their apps, or adjust their privacy settings. So this group is using the TV on its default settings as it came straight out of the box. It's this group of people for whom the kind of default settings and these issues around prominence and preferencing are really important, because they're the most vulnerable audience. This audience also skews older and female. Because if they don't know how to download an app or change their order, they're going to be stuck with apps that that have paid to be pre-installed and prominently displayed. They likely will not understand the limitations or biases of their TV search results and recommendations. They won't know that they might be able to get Bluey for free. They might just pay to download them on Apple TV. And those with low digital skills are also likely to provide or agree to provide more personal information than they need to. They're not going to realize the difference between a request and a requirement during setup. A survey of Australian smart TV users also found that kind of overall 55% of people are unable to identify the difference between a paid ad and a personal recommendation. We showed people this home screen with this paid ad for the boys on Prime Video and asked people recommendation, a paid ad, or a random selection, or they weren't sure. And yeah, 55% of people were not able to identify that as an ad. We also asked people to name the operating system installed on their smart TV, and 45% of people didn't know. And then an even bigger chunk of people got it wrong. So we knew, like, early on they said they had a Samsung, and then later on they named the wrong operating system. So it's not really a thing that consumers know, and it's certainly something. Another a piece that we're working on at the moment is in interviews with retailers. It's certainly not something that consumers in store are encouraged to know about, because when you go in store, they're all just playing like show reels of movies or the Olympics to show off the picture quality. You're not really encouraged or given the opportunity to play around with your TV's operating system. People don't realize how different they can be. And finally, 74% of people we found were uncomfortable with the manufacturer of their device monitoring what they watch and sharing this data with advertisers. So our report suggested that smart TV operating systems are evolving in ways that warrant significant policy intervention, and we suggested to a Prominence kind of review that's happening in Australia at the moment that there should be a must-carry framework for local services to really kind of level the playing field a little bit. We went so far as to advocate for a public service broadcaster shortcut button for ABC iView. I don't think that will happen, but we thought we'd give it a go. And we certainly advocated for prohibitions on self-preferencing in-house partner and third-party apps, and an ad labeling requirement, much like that's been imposed upon web browsers, just so users can tell the difference between recommendations and advertising. So what we wanted to get across today was that we need to start thinking critically about the power of these devices and their complex platform ecosystems, just like regulators have already started thinking about phone and computer operating systems and app stores and competition issues inherent in those. We wanted to start thinking about how we can better empower smart TV users. We certainly don't want to distort the marketplace and degrade the user experience by burying what are really popular US apps, but we need to ensure a level playing field between in-house and third-party services so that those users with limited digital skills can access all of the apps and content available on their TV. Thank you. I'll wrap it up there.
Thank you, Alexa, for that fascinating paper. I'll let you have a sip of water, and then we'll cut to questions. All right.
Are there many people in the room? Hello, everyone.
We all.
Yeah, let's do it. We're on our way.
Yes. Some are coming in to say hello.
Hi.
Well, the others aren't bothering.
It's just Anthony and Sammy from our perspective.
We're here too.
There are others, but it was just a bit awkward coming around.
We made a gesture.
There was a gesture. There was a faint gesture. They gave up halfway, but you know, it's fine. So we've got a packed house. So a fascinating panel there. I think we'll all agree. This wasn't a pre-constituted panel, was it? But it really, I'm right, aren't I? You submitted separately, but it really felt like a pre-constituted panel. The way the papers spoke to each other, themes of new technologies combined with older cultural practices being used to exert power over and shape your experience in interesting and in some cases worrying ways. Okay, so would anyone like to ask a question here? Judith.
Go ahead.
Go.
Can
you hear me?
Do you want to go up so people can see you?
I'll
That's what we were doing yesterday. So,
Oh, yeah.
so people can see.
So here's the camera.
Hello. Thank you, all of you, for your papers. My question is for Alexa. Do you know at what stage of manufacturing of smart TV do the apps get installed on it? If I understood you correctly, the Samsung and the LG don't come with pre-installed US, Netflix, all those. So I wonder if that's a manufacturing decision on not installing those US streaming services?
I apologize if I've or this is going to be a bit complicated because the minute I start talking, I hear an echo. So I'm just going to ignore it.
The tail end of this question is whether or not those decisions on what to pre-install depend on the market into which those smart TV go. I.e., is it an English-speaking market, therefore more likely to watch Amazon Prime, Netflix, etc.? Should we pre-install them? And those Samsung and LG go into South Korea, for example, might be different. That's my question.
Yes. Oh, great questions. Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Sammy. Okay, so I'm sorry just to clarify. So, all of those big kind of US apps, I think it's Netflix and YouTube were and Disney Plus and Prime Video were all pre-installed on all of the TVs. They are paying to be there, and they're paying to be prominent and first. Yeah, and on some TVs, like I said, you can't delete them, you can't move them. If you don't like Netflix, unfortunately, you're really stuck with it. And that actually came up a bit in the user surveys. We asked a kind of open-ended question about what's the most frustrating thing about your TV, and a few people said, "I don't have Netflix. I don't pay for Prime Video, and yet I can't move it. I keep getting ads for these shows that I go, oh, that looks good, and I click into it and I realize I don't have it." So that's a bit frustrating for some people. What isn't pre-installed are local services, the local kind of commercial broadcaster video on demand services that we have here, and the public service broadcaster services on those two big ones, on Samsung and LG. As for when that decision is made, I guess it's a limitation of our research. We looked at the Australian market, which is why I'm here. I'm like, tell me everything about what your smart TV looks like and what it looked like out of the box, because I can only speculate as to what kind of services are, you know, specifically paid to be pre-installed in Japan and South Korea, for example, in non-English speaking countries. What I do know is that Netflix and YouTube and Prime Video are able to do these deals on a global scale, and because of that, emailing me. And because of that, they can it's cheaper for them to go out on 200,000 remotes at the same time, if that makes sense. So something like Stan and Australia's SVOD is pre-installed on most TVs, but the commercial local broadcasters are not. And so we wanted to kind of get at that. I don't know at what stage it happens, to be honest, because the manufacturers will not speak to us yet, but we're trying to get there. If anyone has any insights into it, that'd be great.
Thank you, Alexa. Bogumila, do you have a question, comment? Fire away.
Yes, I have a question for Alexa, because I found your presentation really interesting, and I don't know if you have seen this. I was nodding a lot because I agree with lots of insights you shared with us. I remember when I was researching traditional television, linear one in Poland, this was the same problem with customizers and defaulters, like people with satellite or cable TV, they memorize 174, that's their favorite channel, and they don't change it in the television. So I think it's an old problem, but in a new technological reality. And also this problem with this black boxing, that people don't know what the system is in their smart TVs. And so it's the same like with the algorithm I was trying to say. But I have two questions, and I deal with them myself. So I'm really curious, what's your answer for that? Because in your methodology, you prefer to have this UI analyze and survey data. And have you thought about ethnographic research, how to capture this kind of using smart TVs into qualitative way? Because I saw that you have Lal, Marley, and so on. So probably this kind of thinking is really important for you. And the other and of course, I know it's really difficult because I'm planning the project myself, and I would like to conduct qualitative studies, but it's really difficult to be in someone's households and see how it's look like. And the other question is about theoretical framework, about social theories, the bigger one, not only about the media. Have you thought about using actor network theory? Because it might be interesting for your research to embrace this non-human actors and the system here, kind of non-human actor here, or maybe theories of practice to embrace this materiality level, but also the bodily component and so on. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for those social theory tips, and I will maybe get in touch with you to kind of pick your brain as to how I could apply them. That would be great. We definitely started off, I think Ramon, when he started his project, a part of it was a plan to go into people's homes and watch them use their TVs, and then COVID happened and we had to pivot. Yeah. And we'd like to very much kind of return to that. A lot of people in our survey signed up for further surveying, which would be great. And the next thing that we're really interested in considering, which is slightly kind of in tune with what you were talking about, Bogumila, as well, is those defaulters. And we're quite interested in kind of agency and inertia, and how there's been this kind of return with all of the smart TVs with their own kind of fast channel offering, the kind of free ad-supported TV linear channels, the streaming channels, and this return to like lean back viewing and a kind of move away from this like the audience power afforded by on-demand viewing, but in fact, you know, lots of people are kind of increasingly apathetic and overwhelmed by. So this return back to kind of lean back viewing. So we want to start thinking about the kind of active choice of not choosing TV as well, and like wanting to turn your TV on and not have to go through a home screen like you do on every Samsung or LG, but rather you could just like have it be on the channel that you were previously watching, and it be kind of, you don't have to make a choice. That's something that we're considering going forward, and I wanted to talk to you a bit more about. So yeah, thanks. I went off track there.
Brett, I'm going to make you come to the camera.
I sort of know you can. And now to look this way. Thanks everyone, thanks for those papers. This is a question to all three of you. The history of kind of traditional television we've normally understood in national contexts, and like one of the kind of marketing myths of Netflix and so on, and these new technologies that you've all talked about, is that the idea of suddenly we just be dealing with international television and national borders would collapse. But interestingly, all of your papers, each paper has dealt with a national context. It'd be interesting to hear you reflect on to what extent you think the idea of the nation and its relationship to television has fallen apart, or whether that's a marketing myth, whether that has been disrupted, or actually things are kind of largely the same in terms of the nation. And now I'm going to turn this way because that's where the screen is, so I can listen to you.
Kel, do you want to go first?
You're all being so polite. Raquel, if you take your mute off, on the spot. There you go. You're on mute there.
Can you hear me? Okay. I think I missed the last half of your questions. Like there has the last half.
Okay, so it was just asking about whether, given all your papers have kind of taken a national context, the extent to which these new technologies you're talking about and newer platforms have disrupted ideas of television and the nation, or whether actually it's just more of the same.
Well, actually, I think that it might depend, but actually I believe that it depends on the context, because the culture is pretty much developing in the same sense that the technologies. So actually, even that my work is focused in Spain, what I've been studying is that there's like a trend that mainly repeats in some points, like the main points are repeated in several countries. So I think that it's going to be a trend, a transnational trend, we can say, in order to improve these technologies and these new systems. But some Mediterranean countries or the countries of the south of Europe, for example, always have these new impacts or these new updates, these new changes at the end of the process. I mean, like in the last possessions, the last years, it's always like a process that lasts more than in the main the main countries, we can say. But actually it works more or less the same. But of course, it depends on some minor points according to the culture of the country and the society and how they receive these changes in their daily lives.
So I'd agree with Raquel that there is some international level, and it's on that level, this contradictory perception of algorithm is probably the same in Spain or Australia as in Poland. But what's I think an interesting but sad, especially for me, from my point of view, context in Poland is the ongoing struggle between national TV propaganda, because I don't know if you are aware of the situation of public TV in Poland, and the streaming services are treated sometimes as by the local government as a public enemy. There were some quotes from the ministers that young generation is watching this LGBTQ on the streaming services, and it's kind of Netflix propaganda and so on. So I think that's a new layer of this context, which adds to the international level of the things I was talking about.
I'd be hesitant to kind of say this with too much emphasis, having not been able to see what a smart TV looks like around the world. But seeing the kind of ways in which like the visibility of the major US apps kind of disrupted the local offering, and it seems to be like a story of it's too hard to localize the operating system. That I'm here, like, get it. That's the kind of impression that I'm getting from global manufacturers, is like we can't localize it too much. That's too much of an onerous kind of burden for us. That's quite concerning. And their kind of stance that, oh well, the local services are still available, you just have to download them, is incredibly flawed when a big chunk of people don't know how to do that. So I don't want to say it's like removing the nation from the TV interface, but especially because we found that there's really great kind of still this just it's the ability to access free-to-air TV is still excellent. Lots of points from the remote control and the home screen. So it's still very much enabling that capacity, but I think it does strip the nation from what was such a kind of domestic, and by domestic I mean domestic in both ways, in the living room and within the nation, such a domestic device. Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Any other questions for our panel?
Too complicated.
You can take the wall.
Okay, that's complicated. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for this panel. It was very interesting. I have a question / comment for Alexa, and probably then overarching thing I want your input on. we are more or less dealing with the two kind of pushes. One, the technological revolution in a way, and the other is the old wine in new bottles. I completely agree with this metaphor, and these two things are probably right at the same time, and so we are dealing in this panel with this aspect. The question to Alexa is whether in your research you have used the kind of an old category, an old distinction in televisual content and televisual flow, which is the one that distinguishes between advertising and promotional messages. You talked about paid advertising, hidden paid advertising and stuff like that, but the example you showed looks more like self-promotion. So probably these are both things that can be or should be in the future distinguished, because of course one thing is Amazon promoting its own content, flagship and exclusive and stuff like that. Another potential thing in the content overload we are dealing with is the fact that some production companies maybe or third parties will want to invest and pay the gatekeepers in order for their content to be more visible. And probably these are two things, because I do not think Amazon pays itself to get that kind of. So I was asking you if you have already some results on that, on if according to you and your research, which is great, you have already something to say about this potential distinction between content, promotional material, and paid advertising, the three parts of television flow in a way. And the other question relates probably more with Raquel and Bogumila, and that's on how technologies, and especially smart television technologies, are impacting, for instance, in the advertising market till now. I'm from Italy. The situation in Italy is very similar to the one described on the Spanish market, but looks like we are still in the middle between a fully embracement of the advertising model. So also because of technological reasons, and so if you could give some input on that, and as well on the factor of technology kind of, as Bogumila showed very well, impacting on users pretending to have power, but actually not having that kind of power. I was thinking about the fact it happened in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in France as well, that most European major continental markets developed commercial networks on Channel 5, not because of reasons, editorial reasons, but because it was the central spot in the remote control, and so it was the easiest to access. And so, yeah, sorry, I already talked too much, but I'm here more or less in the speaker position. So sorry for that, and I'm really looking forward to your input.
So we'll have I'm going to orchestrate this. We'll have Alexa first on the first part of the question. If you want to have a stab.
Okay. All right. So advertising and the different types of advertising on the interface is the lack of transparency there is very difficult for us. And what we've seen over the last 6 months or so is the home screen, all of them shift such that they all now include a kind of oh God, I can't remember what they're called, but like 50% of the screen is a large banner that even if you turn off the personalized recommended advertising and you say no to every privacy option, that banner remains there, and it's just this like annoying big space wasting time. So I feel like that it was quite difficult to ask users as well how they feel about advertising when most people are used to the kind of being within an app, within a service, and enjoying that kind of as recommendations from a service, personalized to them, albeit ones that they get really pissed off with over a period of time and kind of rebel against. So a lot of people still kind of enjoy that kind of sponsored content because they think it's of value and they don't want to turn that off. One way that we're hoping to try and kind of unveil that a little bit with is by coming at it from an app perspective and working with some smaller apps. We had a plan to like make our own app and then try and like get it onto smart TV interfaces just to see what would be involved in and required by different platforms. What's involved in making an app kind of palatable and accessible for 5 different operating systems. It must be insane. But another way that we're coming at it is to look at all of the Samsung and LG mainly ad resources because they actually give away quite a lot of information about just how they define advertising and advertising spaces on the screens, and how because they tell you what they can know about the user in trying to sell their advertising. So that's how we're coming at it in the future. If you have any tips, God, please tell us because we don't know. I'll hand over to the other speakers.
So Bogumila or Raquel, if you want to tackle the second part of the question.
Okay, many thanks. Well, how technologies are impacting the advertising, it's quite a complicated thing to explain and to define because actually we've seen so little to what is going ahead of us because we've been experiencing this bump of streaming services for 2 decades, but actually technologies have been with us probably even since television was starting their emissions. But actually, as you said, in Italy, the situation is similar to the Spanish market because we've seen how these streaming services are implementing those kind of personalization of the contents. Like the ads, as I said in my presentations, are more personalized and are more targeted to the audiences. Okay, there's a better project because they have not achieved the results they believed in the first place. But actually, I think that television, like conventional television, cannot do that because it's directed to a more heterogeneous public. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, but television, like the conventional one, maybe can develop different strategies to focus to different niches, like different segments of the audience, because they cannot appeal to young people as well as old people as streaming platforms can do with these questions or these algorithms. And so even though technologies in conventional television are going to be developed, this personalization and segmented content, it's more difficult to implement. So I don't know at what extent can they make a real change. In Spain, we had some controversies with that a couple months ago, like a conventional private television channel here in Spain. They said that there was not a competency, like Netflix was not a competence of any kind with this use of new advertisings, even though that Netflix has always maintained their position of not using the strategies, the conventional strategies of televisions when offering their services. So I don't know at what point are they gonna converge, we can say, because television are not ready to fully embracing the change, as you said, but TV platforms are, as we said. So I don't really know what's going to happen, but hopefully it's going to be a turnout to a different way to appeal to different audiences.
Do you have anything to add there, Bogumila?
Yeah, only a little bit. Probably. Oh, could you? Oh, thank you. Only a little bit to add that, of course, that the impact of new technologies on the advertisement segment is huge. And I don't know if you are familiar with Shoshana Zuboff, but there's a whole, whole literature about surveillance capitalism and how the algorithm and the changes using big data and algorithm change the market because of the hyper personalization and this directing the ads straight to the vulnerable viewers. And I think that what else can I add here? That I want to say something, but I don't remember now. Probably it needs to be like in the European Union regulated more, because we have a huge debates about TikTok algorithm, for example. And I think that Netflix algorithm and streaming service algorithms just went off our radar, that we forget that it's the same technology in streaming services as on Facebook, TikToks, and because of Cambridge Analytica affair or TikTok Chinese that it is produced in China, we talk much more about those kinds of algorithms, but the logic for advertisements, it's more or less the same in case of Google, Facebook, TikTok, and streaming services. So we should probably need more regulation on this. Thank you.
That's thank you very much for that. Thanks for that question.
Is there time for a short question?
Of course there is, Julia, but I must insist you come up and replace it.
Yes, I brought my notes this time. Another question to Alexa, if that's okay. Did you find any interesting differences between the customizers and the defaulters in their background or media literacy, or sort of what kind of things differentiate? And if so, what can a potential, you have some policy recommendations, are there any recommendations for education?
That's a great question. We worked on the on our report with a statistician here, Bruno Stravinsky, at RMIT. And that was very much like the question that we handed him. We're like, okay, cool, we've found these two groups. Like, how are they? Who are they? Why are they this way? What can we do about it? And literally the only kind of demographic correlation that he found were those ones that I outlined around skewing younger and male for the customizers and slightly older and female for the defaulters. And I mean, that's a kind of limitation of the survey, in that it was like quite a small group despite it being nationally representative. So we're talking about 300 people, and there wasn't any other kind of correlations that we could find. We looked at income, education. At the end of our report, we have our full survey if anyone's interested in the survey questions that we asked and the ways in which we framed the questions. It was such an interesting exercise. If you've ever made a survey, oh God, I have nightmares about it, but it was really fun, and I'm glad we did it. Yeah, we looked at kind of how many TVs they have in the home. But there was also a bunch of kind of demographic questions that we didn't want to ask to, put the survey taker off and be judgmental. So there might be room for us to ask those questions in a non-judgmental way, but in the qualitative interviews that we hope to follow up with. Yeah. Brilliant. But there's a lot we haven't done with this survey. So.
Right. Well. Thank you very much for for your questions, audience. And I'd like us to give our three panelists, Alexa, Bogumila and Raquel, a warm round of applause. For the wonderful papers and a really fascinating panel. Thank you very much. And that's called an end to proceedings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really fascinating papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.